Good evening and welcome to Political Forum for Wednesday, August 14th. My name is Donia Mansubi. I'm a CAN-TV board member and I'll be your host tonight. Today we welcome a very special guest. Cook County Board President Toni Preckwinkle is here with us.
Good evening.
Thanks for joining us. So you are watching a live interactive program brought to you as a community service by CAN-TV. Be sure to tell your friends that they can also watch the show online at cantv.org/hotline. We welcome your questions and comments for the president throughout the show. Over the next 25 minutes, we'll try to get as many of your calls as possible on the air. You can call us at 312-738-1060. Again, the number is on the screen. Thanks. So really quick, we'll go ahead and show the contact information for how you may contact the president or Cook County government right here. You can visit cookcountyillinois.gov.
il.gov.
And we'll show that again throughout the show. So we're excited to discuss a variety of topics with you tonight. But first, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Cook County Board and your role as president?
Sure. I'm the executive of the county, president of the Cook County Board of Commissioners. We have 17 commissioners. That's our legislative body. And I'm, as the executive, responsible for the budget and for providing leadership to the county. And of course, the legislative body is the Board of Commissioners.
Thank you. So we'll dive right into a number of topics that we have. And one of them that is especially talked about recently is the census, the 2020 census. So how are you working to make sure that everyone fills out the form, and what's the significance of the Cook County census for 2020?
Well, as you know, every 10 years the government counts the population, and this is critical to local units of government, not just the county, but the city and the state, because every year we've determined about $1,400 comes into the state in federal support for each individual that's counted. So over a 10-year period, over a decade, it's $14,000 per person. And this comes in the form of education grants, health care, anything that's based on population that comes from the federal government. So it's $14,000 over a decade for each individual who's counted. A complete count is critical to every state. And it's not just the federal support that comes in on a per capita basis, it's also your representation in Congress. So the representatives in the House are determined by your population, and it's pretty clear that Illinois is going to lose at least one member of the House as a result of this census, because our population is not growing as fast as some of the other states. And if we're not careful, we may lose 2 House seats. So we really want to be sure that every person is counted, both because of the federal support that comes on the basis of population and because of representation in Congress. And the county has set aside $2 million to do outreach to encourage people to participate in the census.
Great. And how does another topic that we see on national news these days that's somewhat related to this, we talk about sanctuary in the county for the undocumented. Are you looking at ways to expand sanctuary in Illinois, in Cook County?
Well, we're a sanctuary county. The city of Chicago is a sanctuary city. And we decided in the last decade that our sanctuary status dates back more than a decade. We decided in the last decade that we would no longer cooperate in any way with immigration and customs enforcement. And so our jail, for example, does not share information with immigration and customs enforcement. And we are a sanctuary county, and we do our best to serve all of our residents, regardless of their documentation status. And that's particularly true in our healthcare system, where for 180 years we've taken anybody who comes to our door and provided them with care, regardless of their immigration status, their documentation status, their ability to pay, their gender, their race, whatever, sexual orientation. So I'm very proud of the fact that our healthcare system provides this patient care for our residents. And as I said, it's not based on your citizenship status.
Great. So while we're actually on healthcare, let's dive into that a little bit more. So I saw some recent news about Provident Hospital on the south side of Chicago on 51st Street. Cook County Health plans to invest in a new $240 million 8-story facility pending approval by the State Health Facilities and Services Review Board. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Sure. The county invested in 1993 in the renovation and rehabilitation of what was previously a private hospital, Provident Hospital. The county took it over, invested tens of millions of dollars, and reopened the hospital in 1993. But it's in the 25 years since, there have been significant changes in the way that healthcare is delivered. And so it's now an outmoded facility. We are going to be investing $240 million in a new hospital just to the west of the present hospital site. The hospital will stay open. There will be service to the community. We will not close the hospital until the new hospital is available to be open. So there'll be no interruption in service to our patient population. We'll have a brand-new, beautiful hospital, hopefully in the next 3 or 4 years.
Great. And this is near some hospitals that are also in the area. So this is just going to increase healthcare in the community, correct?
Well, it's relatively close to the University of Chicago and some other safety net hospitals, but we've done our research and we believe that there is a population that can be served by Cook County Hospital, and as I said, we intend to build this brand-new facility to serve that population.
Great. And then there's a new outpatient clinic that you recently broke ground on, the $12 million state-of-the-art health center in the Belmont-Cragen neighborhood. In terms of health services, what does this mean for the community there?
Well, last fall we opened up an ambulatory care facility at just to the south and just a little bit west of our present Stroger Hospital. A beautiful new facility, 4 floors of care, a conference room floor, and then 4 floors of administrative offices. So we've been investing in new facilities for our healthcare system. Not just that one, but as you explained, we're also opening a new facility in Belmont-Cragen. Again, ambulatory care, so it'll be primary care and specialty care for that part of our county.
Great. So, budget time. Where are we as we work towards a county budget this fall? I know that you're trying to come up with a budget with no new taxes or levies.
Right. Well, when I came into office in 2010, we faced a really difficult budget challenge. We had a $487 million gap to close, for almost $500 million gap to close. We had to trim programs, lay off people, raise some taxes and fees. And we closed that budget gap, difficult as it was. It was 15% cuts across the board. Every year, things got a little easier. The next year, it was 315 million of the gap that we had to close. So we've faced challenges over the last decade. We've made difficult decisions, structural changes. As a result, we only have an $18.7 million gap to close this year. And I am convinced that we can do that without raising taxes. So we're going to make some difficult decisions, but the gap we have to close is pretty modest in comparison to previous years.
Great. So talking a little bit about criminal justice reform, this is something that we discuss a lot here in the city of Chicago. How are you working with the city to bring down the crime rate?
Well, first of all, let me talk about criminal justice reform in the county. There are 5 actors in the county who are part of our criminal justice system. There's the chief judge and all the judges. There's the state's attorney who prosecutes the alleged criminals. The public defender who defends many of the people who come into our courtrooms because they do not have the personal or family resources to pay for their own lawyers. The clerk of the court who's responsible for record keeping. The sheriff who's responsible for the jail. And I think that's everybody. So the chief judge, the state's attorney, the public defender, the clerk of the court, and the sheriff. And each of them has a role in the criminal justice system. Right. Now, we have been working over the last decade to ensure that the criminal justice system is fair. I usually say the jails in this country are at the intersection of racism and poverty. Disproportionately black and brown people in our jail, disproportionately poor people. And we've reduced emphasis on cash bail. Previously, you would come into court and they would set a bail amount, and for people who were poor, they couldn't pay it. So it wasn't, people in jail were not the people who were accused of the most serious crimes. They were the people who were the poorest and couldn't afford whatever bail was set for them. So we've moved away from cash bond for people who are accused of nonviolent crimes. It's drug offenses, shoplifting, not paying your child support. Um, and as a result, we have a lot fewer people in the jail. And I would argue that the city and our county are not any less safe as a result. Actually, they're safer. You know, in our criminal justice system, you're presumed innocent until you're proven guilty. You're presumed innocent. And so we were detaining a lot of people in our jail for low-level offenses who were presumed innocent. Many would have the charges dropped at their first hearing or their second hearing. They would be found not guilty. Or even if found guilty, they would be found guilty of relatively minor crimes. And so we've put a lot of emphasis on changing what happens in bond court, and that has effectively reduced our jail population. And I would say that the times in which we have been most focused on this effort are the same times in which the murders and the shootings in the city of Chicago have reduced. 2016 was the high point, high water mark. 2017, there were fewer murders than 2016. In 2018, there were fewer murders than 2017. This year, we're on track to have fewer murders than 2018. So we've seen at the same time that the bond court reforms have been implemented most effectively, we've seen a reduction in the number of shootings and murders. So it's hard to argue that our bond court reforms have had a negative impact on the safety of people in the city of Chicago.
And what about CPD's role in all of this?
Well, half the population of the county is in the city of Chicago, but 80% of the people in our jail are from the city of Chicago. And that's a result of hyper-policing of black and brown neighborhoods. You know, half of the population is black and brown, about 26% Latinx, and about 24% African American, but about 86% of the people in our jail are black and brown, mostly black.
We'll get back to this, but we have a caller on the line. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good evening, Toni Preckwinkle.
Good evening.
This is Paula. I voted for you. I'm so sorry you didn't make it for the mayor, but that's okay.
Thank you for your support.
Sweetheart? No problem. I got one question for you. This January 1st coming up here with our recreational marijuana, is that going to be help for the state to make some extra revenue? And is that really going to be happening, Mrs. Preckwinkle?
Well, we're grateful, frankly, to the legislature for legalizing marijuana. You know, the two most abused drugs in this country are nicotine and alcohol, and both of them are legal. And furthermore, what we found in our criminal justice system is that marijuana arrests were disproportionately in communities of color, African American and Latinx communities. So, I mean, basically, white people weren't being arrested for low-level drug offenses, but black and brown people were. And so my argument is that if we're not going to arrest white people for certain crimes, why should we be arresting anybody? So I support the legalization of marijuana just on the basis of fairness. And the county and the city and other entities across the state are going to have to figure out how we're going to deal with legalization, and we're in the process of looking at what's happened in other places and trying to figure out what rules we should set for unincorporated Cook County. The city of Chicago, of course, will make its own decisions about dispensaries and where they'll be located.
Thank you, caller. So let's move on a little bit to affordable housing. So I understand you met recently with some state legislators on the importance of this issue, and this is something that you've worked on throughout your career.
Yes, you know, when I was alderman of the 4th Ward for almost 20 years, 19 years, affordable housing was one of my priorities, trying to build affordable housing in the 4th Ward. And we have to figure out as a city and a county how we're going to provide more affordable housing for working families. Otherwise, frankly, we'll have a city in which only the privileged can afford to live. So we've begun talks with state legislators about changes in Springfield. Rent control, for example, and we're I think about to bring together actors in the county, in the affordable housing arena, in the communities, the organizations that serve the homeless, the development community, to try to figure out what we can do from a policy perspective to change the environment to encourage and incent more affordable housing.
It seems we have another caller on the line. Caller, are you there?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you very much for taking my question. I wanted to ask President Preckwinkle if she has any thoughts on the new gun offender website that Superintendent Eddie Johnson recently took live, tracking the cases of people who have been arrested for gun crimes here in the county?
Sure, I think it's important for people to understand, and this is a hard one. What the superintendent talks about is unlawful use of a weapon, what's called UUW. Now, these are people who are accused of crimes in which nobody is hurt. Let me be clear about that. If you're accused of unlawful use of a weapon, nobody got hurt. Because if somebody got hurt, they would have charged you with assault and battery, or they would have charged you with attempted murder, right? Or aggravated battery, whatever the charge. They would have charged you with something that involved you're hurting another individual. So UUW, unlawful use of a weapon, the crimes listed in this registry, do not involve anyone being hurt. It means you were in the possession of a gun that was unregistered, or your firearm owner's identification card, your FOID card, had expired, or you were in a car in which somebody had a weapon that was unregistered. It may not have been your weapon, but you were in a car in which this weapon was located, or you had bullets for a weapon. I mean, all kinds of crimes which did not involve anyone, let me be clear about that, anyone being hurt. So the idea that we should be publishing people who are accused of UUWs, and again, this is people who are accused, not convicted, as a way of challenging some of the violence in our neighborhoods, I don't think makes sense. We have to focus on the people who are shooters, and we have to focus on the people who have murdered people. And unfortunately, in the city of Chicago, we have pretty abysmal record of bringing those people to justice. In less than 5%, I think it's 5% of the shootings, somebody gets arrested. 5%. That means 95% of the people get away with shooting somebody. And it's about 26% of the murders somebody's charged. They call it closure. So that means that 3 out of 4 of the people who murder somebody get away with it. And these are University of Chicago crime lab statistics. So the challenge we face, frankly, around the violence is bringing people to justice who are the shooters and the murderers. It's not people who have weapons in their vehicle that they haven't fired, or they're in possession of, as I said, bullets, or they have an expired firearm owner's identification card. That's not the challenge we face. The challenge we face is around the violence, and the people who use guns to commit violent acts are charged with different offenses. As I said, attempted murder, battery, whatever, murder. Those are the charges for those folks. It's not unlawful use of a weapon.
Thank you, caller. Again, you are watching Political Forum, a community service of CAN TV. I'm Donia Mansubi. I'm a CAN TV board member and I'm your host. This is a live interactive show, so you may call in if you have any questions for President Preckwinkle. You can call 312-738-1060. We have about 5 to 8 minutes left that we'll be taking questions. So let's talk a little bit. Let's talk about the forest preserves.
Sure.
So, the forest preserves of Cook County celebrated investments of over, I believe, $3.5 million recently for the Dan Ryan Woods. Can you talk a little bit about this and Cook County's role and why this is important?
Well, first of all, let me talk broadly about the forest preserves. As president of the county, I'm also president of the board of the forest preserves, and our county commissioners are also forest preserve commissioners. And in Cook County, we have a 100-year-old forest preserve system, 100 years old, one of the oldest and the largest in the entire country. About 11% of the land in Cook County is in our forest preserves. And the irony is we have the most densely populated county in the state, but we also have the most ecologically diverse. And that's because of the forest preserves, frankly, because we have a lot of the watersheds for our rivers. We have the lakefront, we have forests, we have wetlands, we have prairie, we have a variety of ecological environments in Cook County. And actually, it's the most environmentally diverse county in the state. And that's in large part because of the land that's been preserved for generations in our forest preserve district. We've just invested a lot of money in the Dan Ryan Woods. The Dan Ryan Woods are one of our most heavily used forest preserves. We put money into a new stairway system there, and it enables people to get a lot of exercise climbing up and down those stairs, and a new nature play area for young people. So it's a playground with lots of natural environments.
Great. We love seeing that in the city. It's important for the kids and for everyone to have that space.
Right, and almost everything in the forest preserves are free. You know, our hiking trails, our walking trails, we have nature centers. You can, and if you wish, there's a zip line course. You can rent
Did not know
boats and
that.
kayaks. You know, you can do lots of great things in our forest preserves.
Okay. So you can stay here and go ziplining.
That's
You
right.
can
You
go
don't
to a
have to. You
different
don't have to.
country.
You don't have to drive for hours. And you can also go to our campgrounds. You know, we have cabins. We've got 5 campgrounds around the county. We have cabins. We have tent sites. We have places where you can hook up your recreational vehicles, your RVs. So we have the forest preserve provide lots of opportunities for recreation. Hiking, walking trails. People ride their horses in our forest preserves. And as I said, there are canoes and kayaking rental opportunities, and of course you can bring your own boats to the reserves as well.
Great. So we have another caller. Caller, are you there?
Yes, hello. I have a question. I believe that you talked about the census earlier, and I have a specific question concerning really around immigration. If I want to know what the president's take is on the rhetoric nationally about immigration, especially from our president, and how she thinks that may affect the census in 2020.
Well, I'm a history teacher by profession, and you know, these are pretty perilous times. There's always been a tension in this country between those who welcomed immigrants and the contributions that immigrants can make with new ideas and new views of the world and tremendous energy and enthusiasm and ambition, and people who are frightened of immigrants, frightened of them because their religion was different, their skin color was different. And we're at a time now where the President of the United States has chosen to denigrate the immigrant community. I just remember being horrified as he talked about Mexican Americans and suggesting that Mexican American immigrants were mostly rapists and murderers. You know, in the way in which he talks about the people who come to our southern border, many of them fleeing poverty and economic distress and persecution in the countries that they come from, violence, and talks about them as if they're all criminals. I mean, it's profoundly disturbing. And that same president, of course, tried to put on the census forms a question about citizenship. And given the environment in this country, immigrant communities, of course, were fearful that that information would be used somehow to target people. The courts have said that he can't put those questions on the census forms, but I think the purpose that they put this forward in the first place to scare people and keep them from participating, and I think in that effort they've been successful. People are wary of filling out the census forms when the President of the United States is denigrating immigrants, and particularly undocumented immigrants. So that's profoundly troubling, and you know, I think frankly it was deliberate. It was an effort to reduce census participation in immigrant communities, and particularly undocumented communities. And that's disgraceful and despicable.
And that's why it's so important, right, to get the word out about
That's
this.
why
Yeah.
that's why the county is investing, you know, $2 million in outreach efforts to try to encourage people to participate in the census, because it means money that comes back to our state from the federal government. It also impacts our representation in Congress.
Great. So we, as we're starting to wrap up, you are seeking re-election.
Yes.
So in your next run, what are you really looking forward to? And
You know, well, I'm
issues?
very proud of the work that we've done in stabilizing our healthcare, its finances, and investing in its facilities. The new ambulatory care center on the Stroger Hospital campus, the new clinic that we're building in Belmont Cragen, the new refurbished clinics that we're building elsewhere, you know, are all part of our effort to better serve the people of Cook County. And as I said, we have a 180-year-old legacy of providing great care to the people of Cook County, regardless of their ability to pay or any of their demographic characteristics. You know, we have a lot of work to do, too, in criminal justice reform. We've reduced our jail population by about 40% since I came in office, particularly by reducing the number of people accused of low-level, nonviolent crimes who would await the disposition of their cases in the jail simply because they didn't have the resources to be out on bond. And we want to continue that work in healthcare and criminal justice. And we also have some real challenges around economic development, particularly in southern Cook County. You know, one of the things that I've discovered in the course of this job, is my tenure, is that regions of the country that are the most economically vibrant are also the ones in which there's the least inequality. The least inequality. So we've focused our efforts on racial equity going forward, and looking at all of what we're doing through a racial equity lens. In particular, looking at how we can lift up those parts of the county that have been struggling economically, and provide support for them and help them to invigorate their local economies.
Well, Madam President, we appreciate all you do, and thank you so much for being here tonight.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I always enjoy being on the program.
And thank you to our callers for calling in and asking questions. Our telephone technician has been Sylvia. Thank you, Sylvia. Political Forum is brought to you as a community service by CAN-TV. Please join us every Wednesday night as we address issues in Chicago and Cook County in Illinois. You can also visit CAN-TV 21 and cantv.org/hotline. We hope you have a good night. Thanks.
Thank you very much.